So what InnerSource is, it's a methodology similar to open source. So using open source methods inside a proprietary company to get some of the advantages of the open source way of building software, which I think at this point we could agree is maybe a better way of building software than some of the older models. What it isn't is a just add water solution that somehow magically makes everything happen all by itself. So it's been used to help with lack of innovation, with lack of code reuse, with lack of full stack knowledge across the organization, just with simple bottlenecks because of excessive silos. It's useful for a lot of different problems to cure them. And it almost always also results in much happier employees. Everybody wants to work at Google, partly because it's really fun to be an engineer at Google, because you can cruise everybody else's code. The tools make it really easy to do your job as an engineer. It feels like you could get almost anything done there. They've managed to grow pretty large without losing all of that sort of impetus for innovation. They did that by being aware of the way that open source software was developed and using those methods, translating them inside the company. So it almost always makes your engineers happier. At least that's been our experience. Adopting an InnerSource strategy has huge potential upside. So depending on what the problem is inside your organization, InnerSource has been used successfully to increase innovation in teams that are sort of too tightly connected to ever color outside the lines. It's been successful in upping quality. Pretty much everywhere that we've implemented it, the quality of the code gets better, because inside companies it's rare for real code review to happen. So just changing that is a big deal. But then getting the idea across that a gift of code should be seen as a good thing. A lot of companies' ownership culture is so thick that they don't want to take a gift of code because it's like getting a puppy, then I'm going to have to feed it. They don't want to have to maintain code that they didn't write. So that's automatically limiting how far they can get, because everything has to land on those employees that are directly assigned to that work. But most companies don't actually aren't arranged that way anymore. There's people trying to meet business objectives sprinkled all over the company that might need to influence what's going on in a given code base. And asking other people to write features is not very efficient. Allowing executives to get into escalation paths to determine which work gets done because everybody's oversubscribed is also not very efficient. There are lots of better ways to get through this problem, and we see them expressed in open source communities all the time. So there's just enormous potential upside for companies. Places where the natural culture is to not rock the boat, stay in lockstep, it's very hard for those cultures to figure out how to do innovative things. And so InnerSource has been proven to be really useful to increase innovation in cultures where deviation from the normal path is rare. First of all, you have to do a fearless cultural inventory. You have to really understand what's going on inside your culture and where the impediments to collaboration are. Then you want to do a first experiment. And you keep it small. You want it to be impactful, but not so much so that it's a risk to the business, right? And then you want to do a pretty careful measurement of the outcome that you get from that, but not on every possible measurement you could take, just one thing that you want to influence in that first experiment. Then you want to take the learning from running that experiment, looking at those metrics, and then the last step, so that's the fourth step, is learn and codify that learning, write it down, and get everybody to agree with what they just learned from this experiment that's involved with it. And then pivot, do another experiment. And so starting small, being honest, learning from each level of experiment that you do and incorporating that into the practice that you do next time, and gradually growing the importance of the projects that you take on.